What if the most feared warriors in the galaxy weren't bound together by species, bloodline, or even a single planet, but by a promise they refused to break? What if identity wasn't something you were born into, but something you earned, protected, and lived every day? That question sits at the heart of the Mandalorians, one of the most complex and enduring cultures in the Star Wars canon. Beneath the beskar armor, jetpacks, and blaster fire lies a society obsessed not with domination, but with honor, belonging, and survival after near extinction. Mandalore and the birth of a warrior culture. Mandalorians originate from the planet Mandalore, a world that has been shaped as much by war as by ideology. In ancient canon history, Mandalore was a harsh environment, and survival demanded strength, adaptability, and unity. Over generations, this produced a culture where combat skill became identity, and armor became more than protection. It became heritage. Unlike the Jedi, whose power comes from mysticism, Mandalorians built their legacy through technology, discipline, and relentless training. Their iconic armor, forged from beskar, symbolized resilience. Beskar wasn't just rare and durable, it was proof of belonging. Wearing it meant you had earned your place. But Mandalorian society was never static. As centuries passed, internal disagreements over how their power should be used began to fracture the culture. Some believed endless war would eventually destroy them. Others believed abandoning the warrior way would do the same. That tension would define Mandalore's future. Honor above all else. Honor to a Mandalorian is not a soft concept tied to kindness, forgiveness, or abstract morality. It is a hard rule set, forged through survival and enforced by memory. Honor means consistency when circumstances change, loyalty when fear would be easier, and action when words are meaningless. A Mandalorian's reputation is built not on intention but on outcome. Promises are not symbolic, they are binding. Break one, and the consequences echo across clans and generations. This is why a Mandalorian can be merciless on the battlefield, yet deeply devoted in private life without sensing hypocrisy. Violence for them is not chaos. It is a tool, disciplined and purposeful. Compassion exists, but it is selective, usually reserved for clan, foundlings, or those who have proven their worth. Strength is respected because it signals reliability. Cowardice is despised because it breaks trust. Leadership is not inherited or voted into existence. It is demonstrated repeatedly under pressure. Betrayal, once committed, is rarely forgiven because it threatens the foundation of the entire culture. This uncompromising definition of honor also explains why Mandalorians are perpetually in conflict with one another. Every faction agrees that honor matters. Almost none agree on what honoring it requires. For some, honor means preserving ancient warrior traditions without compromise. For others, it means evolving so the culture can survive in a changing galaxy. These disagreements are not academic. They shape wars, topple leaders, and fracture entire clans. Honor unites Mandalorians in principle, but divides them in practice. Clans, creeds, and constant division. Mandalorian society is structured around clans and houses, extended family networks that function as political units, military alliances, and cultural guardians. A clan is not just a surname. It is protection, identity, and obligation all at once. Loyalty to clan often supersedes loyalty to planet or ideology, which makes Mandalorian politics deeply personal. Alliances are forged through marriage, battle, and shared enemies, then dissolved just as quickly when honor is questioned or leadership fails. There is no single Mandalorian doctrine. Instead, there are creeds, interpretations of tradition shaped by experience, trauma, and necessity. Some clans embrace rigid rules and isolation, believing purity preserves identity. Others adapt, interact with outsiders, and redefine what it means to belong. These differences create constant tension. Civil wars are not exceptions in Mandalorian history, they are recurring cycles. Pacifists clash with militarists. Reformers clash with traditionalists. Leaders clash with rivals who believe strength alone determines legitimacy. This internal division is often mistaken for weakness, but it is better understood as the cost of refusing simplification. Mandalorians do not erase disagreement for the sake of unity. They confront it, sometimes violently. Their culture survives not because it is harmonious, but because it is resilient enough to endure conflict without losing its core identity. Even when Mandalore falls, the clans persist. Even when the people scatter, the culture remains intact, carried in armor, language, and memory. The Darksaber and the weight of symbols. No symbol captures Mandalorian contradiction more clearly than the Darksaber. Forged by the first Mandalorian Jedi, the weapon is both a relic and a test. Its black blade does not merely cut, it judges. To wield it legitimately, one must win it in combat. Not receive it as a gift. Not inherit it. Win it. This belief transforms leadership into ritualized violence and ensures that every transfer of power is controversial. The Darksaber is dangerous not because of its power, but because of what Mandalorians project onto it. It becomes a shortcut to legitimacy, a way to avoid the harder work of unity and trust. Instead of asking who can lead wisely, the culture asks who fought correctly. As a result, the Darksaber rarely unifies. It divides, provoking challenges, rebellions, and resentment. Entire wars have been fought not for Mandalore itself, but for what holding the blade is believed to mean. Over time, obsession with the Darksaber nearly destroys what it was meant to represent. It reveals a core Mandalorian flaw: deep respect for strength, paired with deep difficulty trusting one another. The symbol becomes heavier than the responsibility it signifies, and in that imbalance, Mandalorians begin to realize a painful truth. Symbols can inspire, but they can also trap a culture in endless repetition of the same mistakes. Death Watch and radical tradition. As Mandalore struggled between reform and tradition, extremist factions emerged. Death Watch represented a return to ancient warrior ideals, rejecting pacifism and compromise. Their rise escalated Mandalore's instability and invited outside manipulation. The involvement of Darth Maul in Mandalorian politics marked one of the darkest chapters in their history. By exploiting their respect for combat-based legitimacy, Maul seized power, proving how vulnerable Mandalorian traditions could be when rigidly enforced. This era left scars that would define the next generation. Loyalty fractured. Clans turned on one another. Honor became a weapon rather than a guide. Foundlings and the idea of chosen identity. One of the most powerful evolutions in Mandalorian culture is the acceptance of foundlings. A foundling is someone not born Mandalorian but raised as one. This idea quietly transforms Mandalorian identity from bloodline to belief. It means Mandalorian culture can survive genocide. It means identity can be rebuilt. It also means loyalty is chosen, not assumed. This philosophy becomes central in The Mandalorian, where Din Djarin's relationship with Grogu reframes Mandalorian honor not as conquest, but as responsibility. Protecting the next generation becomes as important as winning the next battle. The Great Purge and cultural near-extinction. The Empire recognized Mandalorians as a threat not because of numbers, but because of resistance. The Great Purge of Mandalore was systematic, brutal, and devastating. Cities were destroyed, clans were shattered, survivors scattered across the galaxy. Mandalore itself became a symbol of loss. Rumors spread that the planet was cursed, poisoned, or uninhabitable. For many Mandalorians, returning home felt impossible, both physically and emotionally. This trauma explains the secrecy, isolation, and rigidity seen in surviving groups. When a culture is nearly erased, it clings harder to rules, even flawed ones. Rebuilding honor in the post-Empire era. The post-Empire period marks a turning point. Instead of fighting for dominance, Mandalorians begin fighting for restoration. Under leaders like Bo-Katan Kryze, the goal shifts from ruling Mandalore to reclaiming it. Season 3 of The Mandalorian reframes honor as reconstruction. The destruction of the Darksaber symbolizes the end of reliance on singular symbols. Unity becomes more important than ritual. Survival becomes more important than pride. For the first time in generations, Mandalorians begin to act like a people instead of factions. Why Mandalorians endure. Mandalorians endure because they are adaptable. They are not bound to prophecy, bloodline, or destiny. They are bound to choice. Anyone can fail, anyone can fall. What matters is whether you stand back up and keep your word. They are warriors, yes, but their most important battles are internal, between tradition and growth, between pride and survival, between isolation and unity. That struggle makes them feel real, even within fiction. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Mandalorian culture, identity, and honor, and you want more breakdowns like this from across the Star Wars universe, like and subscribe, because this is the way.